Close your eyes and let the modern world dissolve. The hum of electricity, the distant roar of the highway, the glow of your screen, all of it vanishes. In its place comes a cold, damp weight. You are standing on the corner of Fleet Street. It is November 1854. The sun has not been seen for 3 weeks. You wouldn't last a day here because of the air. It isn't just air, it's a physical substance. The London particular, they call it. A yellow sulfurous fog so thick you can taste the coal smoke on the back of your tongue. It smells of wet soot, horse manure, and the sharp acidic sting of the River Thames. It clings to your clothes like a damp wool blanket. Listen to the muffled city. In the modern world, sound travels sharp and clear. Here, the fog eats the sound. A horse-drawn carriage passing 10 feet away sounds like a ghost, the rhythmic clip-clop of hooves on cobblestones, softened until it is just a dull, hypnotic thud. Thud and scrape. Thud and scrape. You are a night watchman. Your job is to simply exist in the dark. You are holding a heavy brass bullseye lantern. It is warm in your hand, the only heat you will feel for 12 hours. The flame inside flickers behind a thick convex glass lens, throwing a long, distorted cone of amber light into the swirling mist. Watch the fog move through your beam of light. It isn't a cloud, it's a living thing. Thousands of tiny, wet particles of soot dancing in the amber glow. They swirl in slow, lazy spirals, never settling, always drifting. You find yourself matching your breath to the movement of the mist. Breathe in the damp, breathe out the gray. Your coat is a heavy oilskin greatcoat. It weighs 12 pounds. Every time you move, the stiff fabric groans, creak and swish. It is a slow, rhythmic sound that follows you down the alleyway. You wouldn't last a day because of the dampness that eventually finds its way to your skin. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow, microscopic invasion. First your collar, then your cuffs, then the bridge of your nose. You become a part of the moisture. Stop. Stand still. Listen to the gas lamps. Hiss and pop. Hiss and pop. The gaslight is a sickly, beautiful green-white light. It doesn't illuminate the street. It creates a halo of light that disappears into the blackness. The lamp post is iron, cold and sweating with condensation. You reach out and touch it. It feels like ice wrapped in velvet. You wouldn't last a day because your mind would want to hurry. You would want to reach a destination. But for the night watchman, there is no destination. There is only the beat. The same 20 blocks of stone, the same iron railings, the same shadows. You are a human pendulum swinging back and forth through the Victorian night. Let the weight of the greatcoat pull your shoulders down. Let the hiss of the gaslight settle in your ears. You are a shadow in a city of shadows. The fog is protecting you. The fog is hiding you. The fog is putting the city to sleep. Hiss and pop, thud and scrape.
You begin your walk. Your boots are heavy, iron-shod leather. On the cobblestones, they make a sound that is both sharp and hollow. Clack, clack, clack. Every stone in this street was laid by hand, thousands of rounded granite sets slick with the slime of the city. You wouldn't last a day because of the monotony of the path. You spend an hour just walking one length of the courtyard. You aren't looking for crime. You are looking for the stillness. You check the doors. Reach out and grasp an iron door handle. It is heavy. It is ornate. It has the shape of a lion's head, frozen in a silent roar. You turn it. It doesn't budge. You feel the resistance of the heavy oak door behind it, 4 inches of solid timber bolted from the inside. Rattle and click. Rattle and click. The sound of the lock is a message of safety. The people inside are sleeping. They are tucked away in 4-poster beds, surrounded by heavy velvet curtains to keep out the draft. You are the only one awake. You are the guardian of their boredom. You move to the iron railings of a basement flat. You run your hand along the spikes. They are cold, wet, and rhythmic. Ting, 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 ting. The sound is like a metallic harp. It counts the steps for you. You wouldn't last a day because of the isolation. In the 1850s, the night is truly black. There are no neon signs, no headlights, no glow from the horizon. When you step out of the halo of a gas lamp, you vanish. You become a ghost in a cathedral of brick. The buildings around you are ancient. You can feel the weight of the brickwork. Millions of tons of red London clay, stacked high, leaning over the narrow streets. They seem to breathe in the dark. The chimneys above are silent, but they still bleed a faint, warm scent of wood smoke into the freezing air. Focus on your feet. Clack, clack, clack. The rhythm starts to numb your brain. You aren't thinking about the future. You aren't thinking about your troubles. You are only thinking about the next stone. The stone is wet. The stone is gray. The stone is solid. You wouldn't last a day because your world is too fast. But here, time is measured in the length of a candle or the cooling of a lamp. You are slowing down. Your heart is beating in time with your boots. Your mind is becoming as smooth and cold as the iron railings. Ting, 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 ting. The fog thickens. It swallows your boots. It swallows your knees. You are walking on a cloud of soot and silence. You are the only living thing in a city made of stone and mist.
The hour of the wolf has arrived. It is 3 a.m. The city is at its absolute coldest, a time when the dampness of the Thames doesn't just sit on your skin, it begins to migrate inward, seeking the marrow of your bones. You wouldn't last a day because you have never known the true value of a single degree of temperature. In your world, heat is a background constant. Here, heat is a luxury that must be guarded like a flame in a hurricane. You find a sheltered bolt hole, a recessed doorway of a wool warehouse near Upper Thames Street. The stone is cold, but it blocks the draft that hums through the narrow alleyways. You reach into the deep, cavernous pocket of your greatcoat and pull out your Tommy tin. It is a simple, battered copper cylinder with a wire handle. Inside is a pint of tea, brewed 3 hours ago, now fading from hot to a stubborn, lukewarm amber. You wouldn't last a day because you are used to the flavor of variety, but this tea is Watchman's brew. It is black, oversteeped until it is bitter with tannins and heavily laced with brown sugar and a splash of milk that is on the verge of turning. It doesn't taste like a beverage. It tastes like medicine. It tastes like fuel. Hold the tin with both hands. Do not drink yet. The metal is smooth. The metal is warm.
focus on the sensation of the heat transferring from the copper into the meat of your palms. You can feel the blood in your fingertips beginning to pulse again. You are not just drinking, you are absorbing the energy of the coal fire that boiled this water. In the Victorian night, energy is never lost, it is simply traded. You pull out a doorstep of bread. This is not the soft, aerated loaf of a modern bakery. This is a dense, heavy wedge of secondary flour bread, crusty enough to survive a week in a pocket. It is dry, it is dusty. Crunch and chew. Crunch and chew. The sound of your own chewing is deafening in the silence of the doorway. You realize that you wouldn't last a day because you have forgotten how to eat with your ears. Every snap of the crust, every grind of the grain against your teeth is a confirmation of life. You are a machine, processing calories to keep the internal engine running. Take a sip of the tea. It is thick. It coats your tongue. It washes away the grit of the soot that has been settling in your mouth for the last 4 hours. You feel the liquid move down your esophagus, a narrow line of warmth cutting through the frozen center of your chest. Swallow and sigh. Swallow and sigh. You watch the fog swirl at the edge of your doorway. It wants to come in. It wants to steal the heat from your tin. You pull your knees up to your chest, tucking your chin into the greasy wool of your scarf. The scarf smells of old rain and tobacco. It is a comforting smell. It is the smell of your own history. You wouldn't last a day because your mind would be screaming for a distraction, a book, a phone, a conversation. But here, your only content is the cooling of the tin in your hands. You monitor it with the intensity of a scientist. As the metal grows colder, your break comes to an end. You cannot stay still. To stay still is to let the frost win. You finish the last of the bread, catching every single crumb in your palm. Nothing is wasted, not a calorie, not a second of warmth. Clink and stow. Clink and stow. You put the tin back in your pocket. You stand up. Your joints crack like dry kindling. You step back out into the Yellow Shroud. The city is waiting. The silence is waiting.
You move towards the river. As you approach the Thames, the character of the fog changes. It loses its yellow, sulphurous bite and becomes a thick, white, blind wall of moisture. This is the river breath. It is heavier than the street fog. It is cold with the weight of the tide. You wouldn't last a day here because you have no sense of direction without a horizon. At the docks, there is no up or down, only the grey. You are walking along the edge of a timber wharf. To your left, the black, unseen bulk of a T-clipper, its masts lost in the mist like the skeletal fingers of a giant. To your right, the drop into the water. Listen to the river. Slap and suck, slap and suck. The tide is coming in. The water is thick with the refuse of 4 million people, but in the dark, it is just a rhythmic, pulsing muscle. It hits the wooden pilings with a dull thud, and then the wood groans as it absorbs the impact. Creak and groan, creak and groan. The ships are alive. They are tethered to the land by massive hempen ropes as thick as a man's thigh. You can hear the tension in the ropes. They hum in the wind, a low-frequency vibration that you feel in your teeth. Hum, hum. It is the sound of thousands of tons of wood and iron wanting to drift away. You wouldn't last a day because of the weight of the cargo. You are surrounded by the wealth of an empire, all of it silent and sleeping under tarpaulins. Crates of tea from Fu Chao, barrels of salt pork, sacks of grain, bolts of silk.
You can smell the spices, a faint, ghostly hint of cinnamon and cloves fighting against the stench of the river mud. Inhale the spice, exhale the rot. You walk to the very edge of the pier. You cannot see the water, but you can feel it. It is a void. It is a vacuum that pulls at your balance. You hold your bullseye lantern out over the edge. The amber light hits the mist and bounces back, creating a wall of white. But for a split second, you see a swirl of black water below, a slick, oily surface that looks like liquid charcoal. Drip, splash, drip, splash. Condensation from the crane above you falls into the river. It is a tiny sound, but it is the only thing that marks the distance between you and the deep. You wouldn't last a day because you have forgotten how to respect the elements. You think you are the master of the world, but here, at 4 a.m. on the London docks, you are nothing. You are a speck of soot on the sleeve of the river. The silence here is different. It is a heavy, pressurized silence. It presses against your eardrums. It makes the world feel small, as if the only things that exist are you, the timber under your boots, and the rhythmic slapping of the tide. Slap and suck, slap and suck. You turn back towards the street. The river is behind you, but you carry the dampness in your coat. You are heavier now. You are slower. You are sinking into the night. You leave the watery void of the docks and head north, toward the heart of the city. As you approach Covent Garden, the absolute silence of the docks begins to fracture. It isn't loud, but there is a new texture in the air. It is the sound of the early comers. These are the people who exist in the gap between the night and the day, the ghosts who bring the colour back to London while the rest of the world sleeps. You wouldn't last a day because you are used to the silence of the night being absolute. But here, at 4:30 a.m., the market is a low-frequency hum. You hear the distant rattle of iron-rimmed wheels on the stone, clatter-clack, clatter-clack, as the flower carts arrive from the outskirts. The smell hits you before the sight does. In the fog, smells don't dissipate, they pool. You walk into a pocket of air that smells of crushed stems, wet earth, and the heavy, sweet rot of overripe lilies. It is a strange funeral scent. It is beautiful, but in the freezing dark, it feels out of place, like a memory of a spring that hasn't happened yet. Watch the flower girls. They are shadows wrapped in many layers of tattered wool. They don't speak much. They move with a mechanical, heavy grace, lifting baskets that are wet with the morning dew. Thud and drag. Thud and drag. You wouldn't last a day because of the weight of these baskets. They are made of thick wicker, soaked with moisture and filled with thousands of stems. You watch a girl sit on a stone step and begin to trim the stalks. Snip and drop, snip and drop. The sound of the shears is tiny, a metallic click that marks the rhythm of her mourning. She is making buttonholes for the gentleman who will wake up in 4 hours. She is creating beauty in a world of soot. You find yourself standing still, watching the pile of green trimmings grow on the grey cobblestones. They look like emeralds in the amber glow of your lantern. The market is a maze of timber stalls and iron pillars. The fog gets trapped under the glass roof of the arcade, swirling in the rafters like trapped ghosts. You walk past a cart filled with cabbage, the large waxy leaves reflecting the gaslight like green glass. You touch one. It is cold. It is squeaky. Squeak and slide. You wouldn't last a day because your mind would be looking for the main event. But there is no event here. There is only the slow, repetitive unloading. The same carts, the same horses, the same heavy baskets. You are watching the clock of the city being wound up, one cabbage and one lily at a time. Clatter-clack, snip and drop. The dampness in the air is now so heavy it starts to form droplets on your eyelashes. You blink and the world blurs. You are part of the market. You are a shadow amongst the flower girls. The smell of the lilies stays with you as you move back into the dark.
You leave the market and move into the residential squares, the rows of tall, narrow brick houses where the wealthy sleep. This is where the night ends, not with a sunrise, but with the internal wake. Listen to the flues. Scrape and hiss. Scrape and hiss. High above you and deep inside the walls of these houses, the chimney sweeps are starting their work. They must finish before the first fires of the morning are lit. You wouldn't last a day because you have never lived in a world where the very architecture of your home requires a constant, ritualistic cleaning. Stand against the brick wall of a 4-story townhouse. Press your ear to the cold masonry. You can hear it scrape and hiss. It is a muffled, rhythmic sound. It is the sound of a cane-handled brush being pushed upward through a narrow, soot-choked passage. Every stroke of the brush releases a cloud of black snow inside the house. The soot is fine. It is ancient. It is the residue of 1,000 cold nights. You wouldn't last a day because you are used to things being clean. But here, the soot is everywhere. It is in the lungs of the boy on the roof. It is in the mortar of the bricks. It is in the very air you are breathing. Scrape and hiss. Imagine the darkness inside the chimney. It is a vertical tomb. The brush moves up, hitting the bends in the masonry with a dull thump. Then it pulls back down, dragging a curtain of ash with it. Thump and drag, thump and drag. You look up at the roofline. You can see the silhouette of a climbing boy or a master sweep standing against the gray-violet sky. They are black against the black. They are the only people who see the city from this angle. A forest of chimney pots, thousands of them, all exhaling the last of the night's breath. You wouldn't last a day because you are used to a world that is horizontal, but the Victorian city is vertical. It is a stack of people from the basement kitchen to the attic bedroom, all connected by these narrow, soot-filled veins of brick. The sound of the brushes is the first alarm clock of London. It tells the watchman that his shift is nearing its end, but it also tells him that the real work of the world is beginning. Scrape and hiss. You move away from the wall. Your ear is cold from the stone. You carry the rhythm of the brush in your head. It is a dry sound, a thirsty sound. It makes you want to drink the rest of your lukewarm tea, but the tin is empty. You are walking toward the end of the night. The violet in the sky is turning to a bruised, sickly pink. The fog is still there, but it is no longer black. It is becoming a pale, luminous gray. Scrape and hiss. Thud and drag.
The sky is no longer black. It is a bruised, translucent pearl. The fog hasn't lifted, but it has changed its character. It is now a luminous shroud, catching the first indirect rays of a sun that remains hidden behind the coal smoke of the East End. You are standing at the corner of Ludgate Hill. Here, the first outpost of the day has been established, the coffee stall. You wouldn't last a day here because you are used to the sterile plastic efficiency of a modern cafe. This stall is a wooden cart on iron wheels, draped in a heavy grease-stained canvas. In the center sits a massive polished copper urn, bubbling over a charcoal brazier. Listen to the urn. Hiss, rumble, bubble. Hiss, rumble, bubble. The steam rises in thick white plumes, disappearing into the gray fog above. It smells of scorched beans, chicory, and the damp wool of the men gathered around it. These are the early risers, the draymen, the sweepers, and the clerks who live too far to walk and too poor to ride. You wouldn't last a day because of the shared breath. You stand shoulder to shoulder with men whose lives are etched into their skin in lines of soot and sweat. No one speaks. The only sound is the rhythmic clink of thick stoneware mugs being set down on the wooden counter. Clink, slide, clink, slide. The coffee is not what you know. It is a dark, viscous sludge, stretched out with chicory root and sweetened with black molasses. It is served with a dash, a splash of watered-down milk that turns the liquid the color of the river mud. Hold the mug. It is hot, painfully hot. You don't use a handle. You wrap your frozen fingers around the body of the mug, letting the heat migrate through the ceramic and into your joints. You wouldn't last a day because you have never known a warmth so hard-earned. You don't drink for the caffeine. You drink for the internal combustion. Sip and swallow. Sip and swallow. The liquid is grainy. You feel the silt of the chicory on your teeth. It is earthy, bitter, and sweet all at once. It feels like a heavy weight settling in your stomach, a warm anchor in a cold world. Watch the steam from your own breath join the steam from the urn. They merge in the air, a fleeting, swirling dance of white vapor. You find yourself staring at the droplets of condensation running down the copper urn. Drip, slide, hiss. Every drop that hits the charcoal brazier makes a tiny, sharp sound, a microscopic protest against the heat. You wouldn't last a day because your mind would be searching for a vibe or a mood, but the only mood here is duration. These men are preparing to endure the next 10 hours of labor. The coffee stall is the refueling station for the human machinery of the empire. You set your mug down. The ring of moisture it leaves on the counter is a perfect dark circle. It evaporates in seconds, pulled away by the thirsty, damp air. Clink. The watchman's shift is technically over, but the city doesn't let you go that easily. The coffee has wakened up your blood, but your bones are still heavy with the night. You move away from the warmth of the brazier, back into the gray, as the first voice of the day begins to cry out.
Your shift has ended, but the struggle for comfort has just begun. You move away from the glowing opal of the morning fog and enter a narrow doorway in Flower and Dean Street. This is a common lodging house. You wouldn't last a day here because you have been raised with the concept of personal space. In the Victorian slum, space is not a right, it is a commodity sold by the square inch. Step over the threshold. The air hits you like a physical blow. It is second-hand air. It has been breathed by 40 men, filtered through damp wool, stale tobacco, and the charcoal heaters of the night. It is warm, but it is a sickly warmth. Listen to the floorboards. Creak, groan, creak, groan. The house is made of ancient, rotting timber. It settles under the weight of the sleepers like a ship taking on water. You pay your 4 pence to the deputy, a man with a face like a crushed walnut, and he points you toward your bed. It is not a bed.
It is a four-penny coffin. It is a wooden box 6 feet long and 2 feet wide, lined with a thin oilskin mattress that smells of old sweat and vinegar. You wouldn't last a day because you are used to the silence of a private bedroom. Here, the silence is a chaotic tapestry of human noise. Snore, whistle, sigh, snore, whistle, sigh. 30 men are sleeping in this room. Some are whistling through broken noses. Others are muttering in their sleep, reliving the labors of the docks or the factories. The sound is a biological engine. It is the sound of the city's working class recharging its batteries in the dark. You lie down in your box. The wood is hard against your spine. You don't take off your greatcoat. You use it as a blanket. You don't take off your boots. They are too valuable to leave on the floor. You are a fully clad sleeper. Focus on the texture of the oilskin mattress. It is cold at first, a slick, unforgiving surface, but as your body heat begins to soak into the material, it releases the scent of the house. It is the smell of industrial sleep. Rustle and settle, rustle and settle. You wouldn't last a day because of the proximity of your neighbor. He is 6 inches away, separated only by a thin plank of deal wood. You can hear his heart beating through the timber. You can hear the scratch of his stubble against his coat collar. You are part of a human stack. You are a brick in a wall of flesh and wool. Above you, the ceiling is blackened by the soot of 1,000 candles. You watch the shadows dance in the dim light of a single tallow stub flickering near the door. The shadows are long, spindly, and rhythmic. They move in time with the breathing of the room. Rise and fall, rise and fall. You wouldn't last a day because your mind would be looking for dignity. But here, dignity is replaced by shared survival. There is a strange, heavy peace in being one of many. You are not alone in your exhaustion. You are part of the great tired. You close your eyes. The room begins to tilt. The snores of the 30 men merge into a single low-frequency hum. It sounds like the distant roar of the ocean. It sounds like the city itself, breathing through 1,000 wooden boxes. Hum and pulse, hum and pulse.
Even in the lodging house, the city does not let you sleep in total silence. Through the thin, vibrating walls of the tenement, the sounds of London's industry begin to seep in. This is the industrial lullaby. Thump, whir, thump, whir. In the basement of the building next door, a small print shop is starting its run. You can feel the vibration in the wooden frame of your coffin bed. It is a rhythmic, mechanical pulse that travels through the floor, up the legs of the bed, and into your skull. You wouldn't last a day because you are used to a world where machines are hidden. Here, the machine is your roommate. You find yourself counting the revolutions of the press. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. The thump is the heavy iron platen hitting the paper. The whir is the flywheel spinning, building up the momentum for the next strike. It is a perfect mathematical rhythm. It is the heartbeat of the 19th century.
You wouldn't last a day because your brain would fight the noise. But the watchman's brain is different. To him, the noise means the world is still turning. The noise means the sun has actually risen, even if he cannot see it. You begin to dream in grayscale. Your dreams are not filled with people or places, but with textures. You dream of the rough grain of the paper. You dream of the cold, oily sheen of the iron. You dream of the vertical lines of the rain hitting the cobblestones. Drip and strike. Drip and strike. The sound of the press merges with the sound of a distant steam whistle from the railway at Fenchurch Street. It is a long, lonely wail that cuts through the fog, a silver needle of sound through a gray cloth. Wail and fade, wail and fade. You wouldn't last a day because you have forgotten how to find music in the mundane. But here, the clank of a bucket, the screech of a wheel, and the thump of the press are the symphony of your life. They are the only songs you know. The air in the room is getting heavier. The heat of 40 bodies has turned the lodging house into a greenhouse of human exhaustion. You feel yourself sinking deeper into the oilskin mattress. You are no longer a watchman. You are no longer a person with a name. You are a cog that has stopped spinning for a few hours. You are a gear that is resting in the dark. The city continues to turn around you, a massive iron clockwork universe that never stops, never sleeps, and never forgets. Thump, whir, thump, whir. Your breathing slows. It matches the rhythm of the press in the basement. Your heart slows. It matches the pulse of the city. You are finally, deeply, bored enough to sleep.
You wake in the late afternoon. The lodging house is no longer a silent tomb. It is a bustling, humid hive. Outside the narrow windows, the London particular has shifted from yellow to a deep, soot-stained orange as the sun makes its final, weak effort to pierce the coal smoke. But inside, the air is dominated by the wash house. You wouldn't last a day here because of the wet weight. The women of the tenement are at the communal tubs, scrubbing the city's grime from heavy linen and coarse wool. The sound is a rhythmic, watery labor. Squelch and scrub, squelch and scrub. The smell of lye soap, sharp, chemical, and clean, cuts through the stagnant scent of the sleeping room. You watch the steam rise from the boiling coppers, curling around the rafters like white fingers. It settles on the wooden walls, turning the dust into a fine grey mud. You wouldn't last a day because you have forgotten how much energy it takes just to keep a shirt white. Every movement is a battle against the soot. You stand there, halfway between sleep and the street, watching a woman wring out a heavy woolen blanket. The water hits the floor with a steady, heavy patter. Drip, drip, splash. It is the clock of the afternoon. It tells you that the great tired is ending for some and beginning for you. You pull on your greatcoat, feeling the stiff oilskin settle over your shoulders.
You are preparing to become the shadow again.
You step back out onto Fleet Street. The cycle has reset. The gaslighter is making his rounds, his long pole reaching up to the lamps, turning the darkness into a series of pale, flickering halos. Click and hiss, click and hiss. The city is transitioning from the day of labor to the night of the watch. You wouldn't last a day because you are used to things being finished. But in the 1850s, nothing is ever finished. The fog returns, the soot settles, the watchman walks his 20 blocks. Listen to the first hooves of the evening carriages. Clip, clop, clip, clop. The sound is a goodbye. It is the sound of the world retreating behind locked doors, leaving the streets to you. You reach into your pocket and feel the cold brass bullseye lantern. You strike a match. The flame is small, but in the fog, it is a universe. You wouldn't last a day because you want the light, but the watchman knows the truth. The dark is where the peace is. The dark is where the city finally breathes. Hiss and pop. Step into the mist. Disappear into the gray. The history is over. The sleep is here. Clack, clack, clack.